Hello, everyone. Stacy Casson here, aka the Clarity Concierge. For those of you who can't see me, I'm a very tan woman with short, wavy salt and pepper hair. I have a white flower in my hair. I'm wearing clear glasses, and today I have on a polka dot halter dress, which is lots of fun. Welcome to today's episode of Ask Me Almost Anything. How this works is you put your questions in the comments, and I will do my best to answer them through the lens of talking with the Pokemon cards. And I like Pokemon cards because they are fun and give us different perspectives because we're engaging the power of play to bypass the guard in our head of no, we don't like change because we're just playing, so it's not a big thing. So we'll go ahead and begin like I like to do by just taking a moment to be present. So take a deep breath in and exhale. Deep breath in and exhale. Deep breath in and exhale. Everyone is nice and relaxed. And we're going to start like we always do with the Pokemon card of the day. So we'll just pull a card and kind of see what's the energy or vibe or things that we can be aware about or keep in mind today. And today we have Rowlet. Okay. Rowlet is a little owl with a leaf bow tie in the forest. He's a brown owl perched on a branch, and he's a grass type Pokemon card. And what comes up for you when you think of owls? I think about wisdom. I think about owls are actually really excellent predators, and this particular Pokemon uses photosynthesis to store up energy during the day while becoming active at night. I'm thinking about what are things that renew you, and also bearing in mind when are the best times for you to make use of your energy. If you're a night owl, this may be a card for you. It's a literal night owl, but it can also mean storing up your energy and taking advantage of when you're at your best. I am one of those morning people. I am wide awake and chirpy and perky in the mornings, and I do try and keep in mind that other people are not. And some people have better energy levels midday. I mean, it really just depends on yourself, but it also depends on your environment. I am a morning person, but if it is loud, lots of confusion going on, that's challenging for me to be my best in that kind of environment. If you notice, Rowlet is in the forest, nobody's around him. It's happy. It's a happy little owl there. So just think about your energy levels and when are you at your best, and how can you take advantage of these other times to charge up and store up so that when you need to be productive or when you need to be on, when you need to be at your best, you have the capability and ability to do so. So I love kicking us off with that today. I got a question from somebody. I'm going to keep them nameless. And it was a really good question. It's about how do I stop comparing myself to other people? And the first thing that comes to mind for me is, okay, why are you comparing yourself to other people? And we get the fire energy Pokemon card. Fire is burning hot. This card is orange. It has a glowing sphere with a fire symbol icon. And I think about sometimes people burn themselves out to keep up with the Joneses. I mean, this one has a comet look to it. And so the question is, why are you trying to be better than other people? This person had a really, really good response. Was that you have this idea that you are better than everyone else. And when somebody surpasses you, it misaligns with that expectation. So that brings in this idea of entitlement. When I'm thinking of the fire, you want to burn brighter and hotter than everyone else, but that probably leads to burnout. So when we're thinking about fire and improvement, what are ways that you can control a fire? We've talked about fire in the past, and it is having the right kindling, it is having enough oxygen, it is having a constant fuel source. And if you're trying to just burn everybody else, that's not going to be a sustainable fire. Versus, I'm grabbing my water, versus thinking about what's your baseline and how can you deal with yourself, fuel your own needs and skill gaps, those kind of things. Because really, at the end of the day, you're ever only in competition with yourself. And remember, I love this line. This was from Charlotte Stevens and the Ancestors. And she said, there's a million love songs out there. People don't stop writing love songs. So, yeah, even though there's a million people out there that might do similar things to what you do, or are in your class or are in your job, there's only one you, and you bring a unique perspective. So if you are triggered by other people doing quote, quote, better than you, maybe a question to ask yourself is, what does better mean? And it's funny because my blog today, we're talking a little bit about projection. And usually the ways that we judge others are what we think about ourselves. So when you're thinking through that as you go through the week, why do you feel that there is this gap, right? So what's the challenge with this? Wow, it's another fire energy card. And yeah, there's a lot of energy that if you're just always in competition with other people, or never backing down, or always looking for a fight, that sucks the oxygen out of the room. I mean, it's just, it's not sustainable to keep burning or raging at other people. I sometimes associate fire with rage, but again, it really depends on the situation. If you are passionate about something, that's great. But when your passion overrules other people, that's a problem. And there's even a difference between these two fires. This first one has the comet, it's really incandescent. The second card is a slightly more muted fire. And it's, I mean, for the Pokemon world, it's just different generations, but I kind of like that challenge of tempering the fire a little bit, tempering this idea of competition. I'm a fan of collaboration. I think everybody, we can create these win-win situations. And this idea of needing to be the best or better than everyone else, at the end of the day, what does that serve you? I'd rather, and even if you wanted to be the kindest, nicest person, that is again this construct that you have in your head. And the default thing is, I'm better than everyone else. Look at how amazing I am. So that is a wonderful insight. That person is with me. So again, I don't have to name names, but I'm giving them credit literally next to them. Great insight. Okay, so then we know that trying to compete with everyone is not sustainable, it's not helpful, and will probably lead to burnout. So, what are some ideas maybe that we need to shift? What are some mindsets that we need to shift? And we get the Metal Energy Pokemon card. This is a gray card with a glowing gray sphere. It has an inverted triangle with brackets on the corner. And for this one, I'm just getting the idea of hazardous waste and containing it. And sometimes metal is about being able to withstand the storms. Metal can also be a good conductor. How do you contain that fire in a safe way that it's not hazardous? Again, I have my metal cup and it has just normal water, so that maintains the temperature. That might be another good way to think about it, maintaining the temperature. If I poured something hot in here, thankfully with the insulation, my hands are not going to get burned, but it does keep the liquids hot for quite some time, which is very helpful. So when we're thinking about managing energy, which our friend Rowlett helped us with this morning, how do you sustain and contain that energy? And what's a mindset shift that you can have? And I think this idea of a container also, in this one case, it might be a good idea to diminish your world to yourself as far as trying to grow. But remembering, as we learned yesterday, that we are an ecosystem and we are not the only people in the world. So even if you're trying to improve yourself, let's say you've gotten down to the fact that I don't have to be better than everybody else. I just need to, or I would like to do my best, because your best varies from day to day. I would like to grow, and ask yourself, okay, what does that mean? What does the growth do for you? And is that a good use of my energy? I could decide to spend my time becoming the best Rubik's Cube player in the world. And I could devote tons of energy and hours and practice. And then I can be the best Rubik's Cube player in the world. And what does that do for me? And again, I'm not judging the Rubik's Cube because I don't know. I'm not a good Rubik's Cuber. But if you did get to that point and you have surpassed your own times and you're at a level of Rubik's Cube proficiency that you're happy with, what does that mean in life? How does this help you advance? And again, that's the idea that advancement is everybody's goal. It may not be. There is something to be said for learning's sake. But again, it's balancing that out with surviving and thriving. And if being like able to do a Rubik's Cube is your jam and that builds confidence and that confidence will help you in the future, then go for it, right? But it's thinking about, why are you trying to do what you're doing? What do those areas that you want to excel in mean for you? What does it mean for your community? We talked about, I shared Michelle Price's idea of thinking of 7 generations. So what is, yes, you want to improve, but also think about, what is the impact to the people and the community around you? And so finally, what's one potential way forward? Because there's plenty. And wow, we have the fighting Pokemon card. The fighting Pokemon card is another orange card with a glowing red-orange sphere with a black fist. And I think about this in two ways. I I also look at fighting as a form of resistance. So perhaps resist the urge to compete with everybody else. Maybe stop fighting with yourself. I mean, easier said than done, but sometimes being aware of what are the things that we're resisting against. Why does somebody else succeeding stress you out or trigger you, or set up this kind of defense mechanism? Is it this idea that your worldview, that you're better than everyone else, may not be accurate or may not be healthy, again, or sustainable? We all have a role to play. And if you look at the world as an ecosystem, even the things we don't like play their role. I absolutely hate cockroaches. I despise them. They are just the worst. But I also respect that cockroaches are part of decomposers. They absolutely have a role to play. And if you really just look at them from an engineering design, they're quite remarkable creatures. They can flatten themselves, get through almost any opening. They are very strong. I mean, some of them fly. Ugh, okay, sorry. But they're really remarkable creatures, even though they're not my favorite creatures. And if they all were to vanish, we would see the impact. I have a loved one that despises frogs. They don't like frogs. However, if frogs vanish from the ecosystem, you would see an uptick of mosquitoes and other insects to harmful levels, where then you might see increases in malaria or other diseases. So there are no small roles in the universe. Everything and everyone has a role to play. Good morning, Dr. Powell. It's nice to see you again. Welcome. We've been talking about this idea of competition, and we're only in competition with ourselves. But even then, is that fully sustainable? Good to see you here. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. Welcome back. Nice to see you again. So, yeah, I was just saying there's no small roles in the universe, and even the things that I despise, like cockroaches, and maybe for someone else it's spiders. I just always say roaches just had a bad PR agent, because scarab beetles are really pretty, or even dung beetles are kind of interesting. So they just didn't get a good PR section, and we have a lot to learn from the things that we don't like. And I'm talking about that in my blog today. Perhaps when you have those boss level battles, I like to use a lot of video game references. Do you respect your opponent? Because today is about respect. So, do you respect your opponent? And going back to the question about people that want to improve or to be the best against other people, um, a very dear loved one of mine gave this very insightful perspective that the baseline is that I'm better than everyone else. And when other people surpass you in certain areas, it shatters that illusion. And this is where some of the conflict comes from. When I'm playing a video game and there's a boss battle, the first instinct, because I'm human, is, oh, I hate this boss. This is really challenging. But if you observe the boss that you're fighting, you can get respect for your opponent. It's similar in martial arts. If you're training with your sensei or a black belt or something like that, it is what does this person do that makes them so much better? What can I learn from them? What can I adapt? If you want to be a better singer, listen to other singers and what are they doing that make them so great? What can you incorporate to advance your own level? Because again, they have their own voice. You literally have a different physiology. Unless you did extreme plastic surgery to look like someone else, you're never going to sound exactly like someone else. And then what's the point? There's two of you that sound exactly alike. Versus bring a new voice into the world by expanding your own areas of expertise, your own skills, your own strengths, and that does bring something new into the world. And together we make an orchestra, a symphony. Every instrument has its role, its time to shine and time to recede to make the overall sound more cohesive. So that was what we're talking about today so far. But again, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments. Again, nice to see you here, Dr. Powell. And we're going to go on to a question that I was thinking about, this idea of creative blocks. Tracy Cadessa talked about for podcasters, because I do have a podcast, which I haven't been doing. although some people consider this to be a podcast, but it's not my original idea of my podcast, which is writing fables every week. It's sometimes that just gets challenging. And I came upon something I use in my work every day, which is 5 times why. And so if I think about, well, why am I not doing this blog on a regular basis? So I don't have ideas to write that. So let's explore this with a Pokemon. And we have Whalemar. Whalemar is a giant whale. It's a water Pokemon type. And in this particular depiction, Whalemar is sitting in the water and there's slight ripples coming out from Whalemar. And that just kind of gives me this idea of the impact of these slight decisions that I make every week. And that can impede my creativity. Wilmar loves to startle people. It fills itself up with seawater and plays by bouncing around like a ball. So that's a lot of fun. Maybe I'm not incorporating more play into what I'm doing, but I'm focused on the ripples today, and you might have a different interpretation. And not having material is also not making the time to develop material throughout the week. So, why am I not making the time to develop material throughout the week? What are some of the challenges that are leading to this creative block? And we get our friend Krogunk again. Krogunk is a fighting type Pokemon. It looks like a lizard or a salamander, and it's lurking behind a tree, and it's in the dark, and it has poison sacs. The ones in its cheek will repel its enemies, but the ones in its hands can also be very helpful for headaches, apparently, in the Pokemon world. And so the challenge is that the seeds of our creativity are also the seeds of our destruction at the same time. So being, I guess, a free spirit can sometimes also mean that I don't have the discipline that's necessary to write down or come up with these story ideas. And it honestly doesn't take long. I've done this in the past where I give myself 5 minute tasks or even 15-minute tasks, sometimes on the weekends, an hour of power. And it's making out that dedicated time to be able to be creative and to create these stories for my blog. And to be honest, I've had some ideas and I just didn't take the time to develop them. Like I had this idea, say now you get a sneak peek of a future podcast where a person, everything they say happens. And what would be the outcome of that? Everything they say happens. So we'll see what happens with that one, right? I have to make the time. So what's the shift that I need? What can help me? And again, if you have any questions, please put them in the comments and we'll get to them. And so we get the green grass energy Pokemon card. A lot of things about energy this week. This card is green. It has a glowing green comet sphere with a black leaf icon. And I've been the cards have all been but yelling at me to make time to get out in nature, to rest, to recharge. And I have not been doing that. That's absolutely a shift. Yesterday was maybe the first time I was outside in the sun. I went to a farm store. It's not a farmer's market, just so y'all know. And when we got there, that lady was so hostile, but we just stayed open. And by the end of the day, I'm feeding koi fish. But it was really nice because it's a farm. There was all these trees around. It's a canopy. It was cooler there than out on the road where there's not this tree canopy. And it was just a different pace. So it's trying to think about, going through the five whys, why do I have this pace? And this kind of ties back into the original question about how to improve. And it's this baseline that, for me, definitely being a perfectionist doesn't help. For my audience, you can share if that's your perfectionism gets in the way of a lot of things, and wanting to do something that's good quality out there. So it's realigning, perhaps getting back to what I do naturally and taking advantage of when I do have energy. Maybe I don't need to watch that C drama or K drama. Maybe I can discipline myself and use that as a reward. Hey, if you spend 5 minutes working on your blog story, then when it's time to record, you're ready to go. I mean, I've been doing that pretty consistently with my blog, but a blog is easier. You don't have to record it and get the sound just right. And I definitely like working from a script with my podcast because it's easier to get transcripts. I do believe with the lives, you can put on the closed captions, so I don't stress as much about that. But something that's going to live on, I definitely want to have those transcripts so that most of my audience, or the majority of my audience, can access that. Okay, so need to make time to do this to get back on the wagon. And what can help? Hi, Erin, welcome. Welcome. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and I will get to them. So the last one is Pikachu. What's a shift forward? Pikachu is like an OG Pokemon. Most people associate Pikachu with, or Pokemon with Pikachu. This is like a little cat rabbit with a lightning bolt tail. Pikachu is happy in a village. There's joy. I like joy. And the yellow colors to me is about empowerment. So, what are ways that I can empower myself? And in my journaling this morning, it came up with this whole victim mentality. So, woe is me. I absolutely accept that not being consistent on my podcast is definitely related to the ripples of the actions that I'm taking. And now I've said this out loud to a lot of people, so that makes me feel a little accountable about these things. And if you want to hold me accountable, please feel free to say, hey, how's that podcast going? So I will get back on track with the podcast as far as that goes. It is writing, again, fairy tales to illustrate some of the challenges that we have in life, and being organic with the time. A lot of the earlier episodes really were thinking about situations that happened to me and turning them into a fairy tale to make them more accessible. And sometimes fairy tales, I think oftentimes fairy tales give you the space because it's a fiction, but sometimes you get more truth from fiction. I talked about in one of my other lives the story of Mommy Dearest, and most people look at that movie as campy. It's like a cult classic, but I've looked at some analysis videos, and a lot of people in the comments that have actually been through abusive relationships are like, if I try to describe it to you, it would seem so over the top and ridiculous. So sometimes being accurate in your description of a situation almost makes it surreal. It falls into an uncanny valley. And that's why fables and stories endure for such a long time, because they bypass that part of our brain that's logical, and it taps into something else, into our subconscious and into a different realm of understanding. And so sometimes to say truths, you do fictions, which is why we have all these enduring classics: Gulliver's Tale, Gulliver's Travels, Little Women, Things Fall Apart. Like, all of these stories are the writer takes creative liberties, and you kind of do that to you use fiction to make truth more evident. The Emperor's New Clothes, that that tale resonates for so long because we see that oftentimes leaders have nothing to stand on, and who's brave enough to call them out, right? And once you call it out, people can see that the emperor has new clothes. So, and we've seen that live today, as we continue to advocate for Palestine and Sudan and the DRC and all of these other places. The emperor has no clothes, and we have more power than we think. So there's your daily revolutionary message, in my life. Any questions? I don't see anything yet in the comments, but if this is resonating, I'd love to hear that. Where are you joining from today? That would be awesome to hear as well. And if not, we'll continue on with my random questions, to help us with that. Okay, I don't see anything yet. Just checking the other streams. Okay, cool. So we'll go with Tigro. And again, if something resonates, put it in the comments. Tigro is my go-to when I don't have questions. It helps to spark other things. And so a potential topic, oh wow, we get Toxicroak. This is a fighting type Pokemon, and it kind of looks, I'm not sure if it's the evolution of Krogunk, but it definitely looks like, a lizard type that's now armored and surrounded by, it looks like a poison cloud, and its power is to exact revenge. And I know the card's kind of sparkly, so it's hard to see. And that, I think, ties in really beautifully with some of the other things that we're talking about, especially in this idea of competition. Yeah, wow. This is a really powerful card to me. This idea of wanting to be the best so bad that you're poisoning yourself and poisoning the world around you. And yeah, it does evolve from Krogunk. So that's pretty interesting. I just saw that in the fine print. So again, those choices that we make can ripple out to disastrous consequences when we maybe don't resist those urges and we're going for revenge instead of trying to understand our place in this world. We're not better than anybody else, but we can absolutely strive to make the best use of our gifts. So that's an interesting topic. So what would be a goal with that? And wow, I'm not really surprised. We get the fairy energy Pokemon card. So this is a pink card that has a glowing pink sphere. Inside the sphere is this stylized flower, maybe a tulip. And I liken the buds or the petals to hands cradling something, and in the center you have what's either a bud or a star, a diamond, or maybe a brain synapse, but definitely healing. When you're looking at these two together, what will heal these poisonous attitudes, this poisonous mindset? And again, we are not alone. We are part of an ecosystem. So if a part of it is, I'm trying to think of a nicer word, if a part of it uh, is not in alignment with everything else, I guess that's the nicest way I can think of to put it, is trying to understand that underlying need that changes from something that we all need nurturing to something that becomes toxic and poisonous. So what are the realities of that situation, or where are the gaps? How ready are we to heal? And okay, we get a Pidgeot Spirit Link trainer card, and this is Pidgeot is a bird, and it kind of is doing a Doctor Strange kind of thing with these two energy rings. And I think it just depends on how you feel that day, if it's wielding it or if it's defending itself against them. I don't really go by fully how Pokemon work. I don't actually play Pokemon. I just like the cards. but I love the imagery. And depending on where you are in your journey today, you're either fending them off or wielding the power. And I think it's really interesting, the comparison from Pidgeot to Toxicroak. Both of them are wielding things, and one of them looks like it's dealing with more positive energies, or and the other one, it's got this poisonous atmosphere. So how close or ready are we to change and to heal? Do we want to just keep being the victim, the injured person, and keep lashing out? Or do we want to do something different and shift that energy into something more helpful for ourselves and other people? Because if you you need to heal the relationship with yourself in order to be able to extend that to now repair the harm, if possible, that you have had with other people. Okay, so what are some opportunities or things that we can look at to help us with that situation? And we get the single strike energy card. This is a fighting energy card. It's a glowing black sphere with an orange fist, so it's kind of the reverse of this normally. And it is breaking up some magma around you. And I think that is about making a radical change. It is breaking the paradigms and the norms that you've had in the past. It's maybe making a breakthrough through realization that, wow, this is not helpful. This is not working out for me. What Everybody is leaving me, nobody's around me. So I think that can help to break the cycle, break those paradigms in order to start the healing. Those are some opportunities for you. It's being willing to have a breakthrough, to make a change, to let things fall apart sometimes, to hit that rock bottom, to recognize that you need to change and to find an antidote. So what's one possible way forward? Again, everybody is different, and you will have your own ideas that come up for you. And okay, we get Makuchita. Makuchita looks like a yellow sumo robot. It is glowing yellow. It's a fighting Pokemon, and it is walking through the forest. It has kind of like red cheeks. Hey, good morning, Asmara. Good to see you today. We're talking about, um, I think the theme today has been self improvement versus competition, unfettered competition. Again, we have Toxicroak, which is like the epitome of making the choice that you must defeat everybody. And it harkens back to yesterday talking about us being an ecosystem. So a way forward is to kind of tap back into nature, with because Makuchita is walking through the forest and it looks pretty happy. And it's actually not fighting anyone right now. So I think it's just having this quiet, assured confidence because you have come here and internalized this joy. That's a vibe I'm getting from Makuchita. Just minding your own business, walking through nature, reconnecting with nature is a good way to heal some of those things, because nature has so many examples of what an ecosystem looks like. And it's almost funny that these two cards are kind of in opposite. Well, this way they look together. So, well, I never remember mirror images. So when I'm looking at them, they're going in completely different directions. So it's kind of thinking about changing directions and pivoting from this idea of revenge, the healing, shifting that energy to something else and breaking up those paradigms so that you can be confident and you can embrace your your full self, your inner strength, all of your gifts and talents, but again, being part of the environment. And this one, Makuchita, is strolling through the forest. It's not crushing everything under its feet. It's found a path and a way. So, what can you do to find your way to improve yourself, but not at the expense of dominating everyone else? That you are not better than everyone else, but you're part of an ecosystem. As Mara, I never thought I would be defending roaches, but they're even a vital part of the ecosystem as well as frogs. Anything that's out of balance or removed changes our entire environment. So those are some of the things that we've been talking about is self-improvement, taking advantage of your energy, knowing when to like store it up, know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, know when to run, as Kenny Rogers would tell us from The Gambler. So it's lovely to see everyone. We still have 20 minutes, plenty of time to get your questions in. I'll give it a few to see if anybody has some questions or comments on what we've talked about today, if anything resonates with you. Okay. So the other thing we talked about was drilling down to why we're at a point in our lives right now, and that's another tool that I like. It's called 5 times why. We did that as to why I'm not consistently putting out a podcast, but at least I'm consistently putting out a blog. So our responses for that was making time, baby steps. So for me, it's 5 minute tasks to try and write out copy or brainstorm some of those story ideas or expand the story ideas. And for you, that might be something different. Again, I don't see any questions yet, but it is lovely to be with everyone. So we'll do another round of tea grow and see what comes up. And again, I have something exciting to share. I have named a date for my next Clarity Play Shop. It's going to be the end of March, and I don't have a time yet, but it is the end of March. And you can join me as we explore how to get clear and get unstuck from situations. We have a lot of fun during this time. So I will announce more for that, but I'm really excited about finally naming a date, getting out of my own way, and putting myself out there even further than we have before. Okay, so today's tea grow, until I see some questions, is Execute. And this is a fun card. This is a grass energy Pokemon. These are a bunch of angry little eggs. They kind of look cracked and twisted and demented. They work together, and so something is off with these eggs for sure. I don't think you want to make an omelet. I get this idea. If you want to make a difference, or you want to make some cake, you got to crack a few eggs. They use telepathy among themselves, and they also can carry the genes of other species. But just looking at these eggs, I get this idea of something went wrong in the transfer of the DNA. Um, how can we heal these execute eggs? So that's a topic where, and it's funny because I'm reading this book called Blight, and there is a giant vault. There's a couple of them around the world, but there's a giant vault in Norway of all the seeds of many different species to kind of be the gap for if our food system collapses, which with industrial farming, that is a huge potential. So that's something to think about. And okay, so what is the goal? What can help us with this particular topic? And we get again the Steel Energy Pokemon. This one comes up a lot with a Comet Flare. This is a great card with shiny gray, so it's silver or steel colored, with this glowing silver steel ball. It's actually steel ball with an inverted triangle with brackets on it. So that kind of to me ties into this idea of a vault. And if I circle back to the other question about how to continue being creative when you have writer's block? That's basically the question, or any other kind of artistic block, is maybe containing some time to help translate that DNA, that creative DNA, into something helpful. So that's a goal to me, of how to make that time to build up my strength, build up that muscle, build up the steel. Steel is flexible, steel can withstand forms. How do I make the time to conduct? Steel is a good conductor. Those ideas, in order to translate this correctly, and maybe interject some other DNA to heal the cracked eggs. So that's a potential goal, and that might be your goal. You might have a different interpretation, and that's fine. Happy for you to put that in the chat. I'd love to hear everyone else's comments, but I'm just gonna run with the story that everyone is loving what I have to say, and they're going, ooh, this is amazing. Okay, so what's the gap? How ready am I to make this change? And we get the water energy Pokemon card. And water, it's a blue card with a glowing blue sphere with a water droplet. And sometimes this water droplet to me looks like a giant eyeball peering down. Water ties into feelings, but water can also, in magical worlds, running water is something that cancels out old energies. It literally washes them away, washes them anew. When you have trouble with a situation, I like to visualize water just washing things away. Like when I take a bath, it's just, I'm getting rid of all the old things, just wash away, wash away. So that is something that comes to mind. It's thinking about how to renew, dive deep into some of these challenges, and find a place of stillness. So if we're looking at a container and trying to connect with something, not in a warped way, but something that can, make use of this or heal this. I don't know if you can actually heal a cracked egg. Humpty Dumpty couldn't be put back together again. But how can we shift that wave, of the kind of, demented angry thinking, and shift that into something else, to grow, to heal, to enact the things that we want in life. So, what are some options for that? Okay. Oh, I love this one. We have Cutie Fly. This is a little bug with really pretty wings, and Cutie Fly is flying through the grass. It's a yellow. It looks like a yellow little chick with a long pointy beak and these translucent wings with pink and green, and it blends nicely into the environment with a little pop, and it's a fairy energy Pokemon card. So sometimes it's flying around, taking new vantage points, exploring new areas and arenas. That is a definite possibility. Cutie Fly is yellow, so I am associating yellow with empowerment. It's seeking joy to heal. I mean, we have our demented eggs again, execute, to maybe break out of that groupthink. There's a lot of times that our thoughts aren't really our own. It's some things that we have been socialized to believe a certain way. And or if you are exposed to certain media, you will come up with ideas that may not be quite accurate. So it could be just shopping around, looking at different information sources, vetting your sources, vetting your thoughts and your ideas. There's been a lot of cards in the past few days around those underlying systems, those undercurrents. And again, a big part of that is your own perception. These execute eggs could just be a literal example of how you see the world versus what it actually is. And if you are not feeling safe and and secure, then everyone looks like a threat to you. So the challenge is that true? Is that real? The lovely Asmara asked a question yesterday about how to improve our discernment of a situation. And really, sometimes at night, you see something lurking and you think, oh my God, someone's in my house. And no, it might just be a coat on a coat rack, or it could be the shadow of something else in your house, right? So sometimes it's asking ourselves, are these really what we're seeing? And I'm showing the execute card again. Is it really, is that what things look like? Or is that our perception about the situation? And digging deeper into those emotions, or maybe washing away that old thought pattern, might give you a different perspective about the situation. I'm also reminded of our earlier conversation about this idea of boss battles and this idea of respecting your opponent. What is their playbook? Even if we're going up against global systems, understanding their playbooks, understanding their tactics and strategies can help you to develop counter strategies to be more effective. Understanding what drives them. Obviously, in some situations, it's not decency or care about humanity, it is money or power. And so, understanding how those things work can help you to come up with a counter tactic. Again, fly around, see other points of view, other perspectives. Do you have the complete picture, or are you looking at a skewed version of reality? So, what can help us with that? What's a way forward to maybe look at things in a different way, to get to a depth of the matter, to look deeper? Again, that water droplet sometimes just looks like a giant cyclops eye above the fray. And we get Makuhita again. Makuhita is walking through the forest, big and bold and confident, but glowing with this personal energy and in an organic way. And also, it has a surprise attack, but we are trying to attack certain things in life. But again, what are we really fighting against? Are we fighting our perception of something, or are we engaged in reality? And a lot of cards hearkening us back to getting connected. And if it's not actual nature, like if you maybe don't, you live in a concrete jungle, how can you get back to more organic things? Your body is an ecosystem. How can you be present with that if you maybe can't get outside due to various reasons? How can you get inside, right? If your meat sack was your environment, what's going on there? You can just take the time to listen. Like, what are the thoughts going through your head? Yeah, no problem. Enjoy your breakfast. What are the thoughts going through your head? And oh, that's a good one. I'm going to come back to that very quickly. And what are the feelings and sensations, so you can be more holistic? So, as Mara asks, how can we better free ourselves from expectations, be there our own or others? We kind of touched on that a little bit this morning, but I'm always up for a challenge of a new perspective. How can we better free ourselves from expectations, be their own or others? So, what comes to mind first is, what are the expectations that we're having? And are those real? Can you close the door? Thank you. Okay. Oh, this is a new one. Okay, so we get an Ultra Ball. And Ultra Ball is a, a more specialized tool in the Pokemon world. It is sparkly. This one's yellow and black, and you're more likely to catch your Pokemon with the Ultra Balls. But I mean, they're harder to get these things. So, what are the expectations? What are we trying to achieve? Do we need the Ultra Ball in every single situation? There's a perception that you need to have the shiniest tool. Like, this isn't just a ball, it's an Ultra Ball. And it also doesn't catch everything. So I think the first question is, what are these expectations or aspirations, and why are they important? Who determined that? We kind of talked to that a little bit about that yesterday. This, even the idea of being productive. Who came up with that idea? Who said that that is the best way to be? So understanding the expectations is the first step in being free from it. And so again, don't look at the shiny Ultra Ball. It's very shiny. It has sparkles all around it and looks really amazing. But is that the right tool for the situation? So it's a challenge with that. And now we get the Scroll of Scorn. This is a giant scroll surrounded by magma, and it's chained up. And I think that ties back to my my special person that's with me, but I'm remaining nameless. They said that a lot of times in competition, the baseline is that you're better than everyone else. And is that part of the basis of your expectations? So the Scroll of Scorn to me thinks about, do you think you're better than everyone else? And is that kind of the baseline of your expectations and or others? Because sometimes we think you're better than this. I mean, I live in America and every day we're like, you're better than this, America. But no, this is America. This is what it is. And if we keep fighting against the reality of what this system has shown us time and time again. Good. I'm glad you're relating to the Scroll of Scorn. Then we're never going to meet these expectations. So what can help us with that? And it's funny, the Scroll of Scorn is also furious anger, and this does damage. But like every damage I think that happens, we take that on ourselves because it's at a cost. Okay, so once again, we get the healing energy Pokemon card, the fairy energy pink card with the kind of healing magical tulip. So, how can we better free ourselves from the expectations? Is first to examine them, examine our motivations, examine the shiny Ultra Ball. Do we need those tools? Do we need to be what's considered the epitome of everything else? Like, I think I'm a singer, and I always look back that if I keep comparing myself to people like Aretha Franklin, um, I don't know, Maria Calla, just, all the famous great singers, I would never sing again because I cannot be them. Uh, and that's okay. And those people have their place as well. But some people just vibe with, I don't know, the Violent Femmes because, I mean, that guy doesn't have an amazing singing voice, but there's an energy that's fun in the songs that fit the mood. Um, Everything has their role to play. So I think it's maybe coming to terms with who we are, and that we don't have to be the best at everything else. We don't have to be better than everyone else because, again, when you look at life as an ecosystem, everything has its role to play. A mosquito even has its role to play out in nature. It can be seen as a parasite, it can be seen as a pest, it can be seen as food. If you're alone in a room with a mosquito, that is the only thing in the world that you will notice, versus if it's out where it belongs in the scheme of things. So everything depends on the situation. When things end up where they don't belong, that's when they cause uh, trauma. And I don't, that seems kind of hostile. So let me put it a different way. Let's say you went to another country and you tried potatoes, and you've never had those before and they're delicious. And so you bring the potatoes over to your country and they actually grow. That's awesome. But in their own environment, and this is from the book Blight, in their environment, they have been a part of that ecosystem, including like the fungus and the bacteria that are natural to that ecosystem. So they live in harmony to the best of their abilities with that. Whereas you've now transplanted this to a new place where perhaps that ecosystem has not encountered that fungus before. And therefore, this potato, while delicious and thriving, can also allow some of the harmful things to thrive. So that is why this healing energy comes into play. We're going to go a little bit over, but I really want to answer this question. So finally, what can help us move forward? And we have Riolu. Riolu is a fighting Pokemon type. It's a dog. It kind of looks like Underdog, the old cartoon. It has a like a mask on it, and it's about to jump off a cliff. And this also gives me vibes of the Fool in traditional tarot. The Fool is a person readily jumping off the cliff, and normally the little dog is like, "Hey, you're jumping off a cliff," but I guess the little dog decides it's going to follow its master off the cliff. And I think that when we're trying to free ourselves from our expectations, sometimes we need to leap off the cliff of those expectations and see what sorts out at the end of the day. I love this card because Real is very empowered. It is full of energy and it's ready to take risks. And walking away from those expectations is a risk, is a challenge, and it requires that self healing to see where we need to make a change and shift those paradigms. So that was an amazing final question. Thank you, Ismara, for coming through. Thank you, everybody, for joining this episode. And I will see you all tomorrow at 6 o'clock Eastern time. That might be a little late for my friends across the pond, but there's always a replay. Have an awesome day, and thank you so much.